Joining us now, Thames Valley Police and Crime Commissioner Matthew Barber. Good to see you. Appreciate you joining us. So the Victims Commissioner there saying that she thought the PM had gone as far as he can go. What's your response this morning?
So I think some of the changes that are being talked about should be welcomed. The going further around rapists, child sex offenders, of course, people want those people to be excluded from early release. But I think the government can go further, and it's ironic that the case that really sparked the big public debate about this policy, the killing of PC Andrew Harper, is one of those cases that is not covered. And I think it is perfectly possible for the government to go further to deal with his killers, to make sure that they are not covered by the changes in the Sentencing Act. My understanding is that the opposition will be putting an amendment to the legislation when it comes in early September to specifically exclude killers of emergency service workers, such as those who killed Andrew Harper. I think the government have got an opportunity now to backtrack on that and make that small change. I think they should do that now over the summer, because if they don't, then I can see in September their MPs are going to be in a situation of being forced to effectively vote to let Andrew's killers out of prison.
What do you think this situation tells us about the fragility, the fragile nature of where crime and punishment's at the moment?
So obviously we know we've got a larger challenge around the nature of the criminal justice system. The prison capacity problems are very real, but the government have a choice about the decisions that they are going to make and where that balance lies. And what message this is sending to our police officers who are out there now is to say, actually, the government don't consider the killing of a police officer as being that. I think the Lord Chancellor himself used the phrase sickening crimes, that it doesn't fall into that category of those most sickening crimes. And I think for most of the public, for most of your viewers, they would think it does. Of course, it's right that we make that change so that rapists and child sex offenders stay in prison. It's remarkable that only a few months ago, Keir Starmer's government was whipping his MPs to oppose those changes. So I'm glad that the government is now going to change that position. But it seems really clear to me there is a very easy way of the government going further around this, one of the most egregious cases, which has brought this into the public domain and the public debate. And the government has got an opportunity now over the summer to say they will include the murder and the killing of emergency service workers in that change. Because if they don't, then I will expect to see opposition amendments to that, and opposition, Labour MPs will be forced to effectively vote to let those dangerous people out of prison. I don't think anybody wants to see that.
The original early release scheme under Keir Starmer came about because 2024 there was somewhere around 100 prison places left for the adult male population prisons. There is now around 2,000 places left. There was fears that it was going to get back to capacity by November, potentially. You never know what happens over the course of the summer. We've seen it before in London, for example. And they will say, the government, well, look, years of underinvestment, they might even allege mismanagement by Conservative Party politicians through the course of the government of 14 years, led to this point. As a PCC, who is a Conservative PCC, do you accept that, to some degree, the political spectrum across the board has let the public down to some degree when it comes to getting this right? Because we're in a position that didn't just emerge yesterday, it's emerged over the course of years and years.
I think it's clear that we need more prison places, and we need a fresh approach to how we lock people up, how we deal with crime and punishment in this country. But we're not seeing the government fixing this problem. We've actually seen less effort being put in by this government in terms of what much needed, which is building those prison places. And what the Sentencing Act fails to do, which all of the other early release schemes that we've had in this country have done, is they fail to look at the risk around individuals. This is very much blanket legislation that says this particular crime type, you will be released after just serving a third of your sentence. What is missing from this, and I think it's a really serious point, is that it doesn't look at the risks that individual prisoners might face, particularly, and this is really concerning that it's not being included in what the government are looking at now, domestic abuse perpetrators. So those people who we know could pose a risk to family members, to former family members when they come out of prison. Those are the people we should be having a really careful look at individual cases to make sure they're properly risk assessed. And what the Sentencing Act does is just say a blanket approach. We're just going to let people out of prison after a third of their sentence for certain types of crime. And this is how the government have got themselves into this mess, because it's not properly risk-based. So, yes, I welcome the fact that rapists and child sex offenders will be excluded from this, but I think the government can go further. And as an absolute minimum, they should be looking at making sure the killers of Andrew Harper are not part of this early release programme.
Just briefly, you sit between the electorate and the officers that kind of work amongst the public. To what degree can you look at both sides and say that Thames Valley Police and policing more generally is still supported and defended by the state at the moment?
So I think it's a real challenge, and I think police officers I've spoken to this morning, when they've heard the news, really feel that the government has no longer got their back. This was a case which didn't just affect police officers in Thames Valley, it affected the whole community, and it was not just locally but across the country. People really felt this. This was a young man just married who was just doing his job, doing his duty, putting himself in a dangerous situation to respond to a burglary, the sorts of things that police officers will do every day, day in and day out. And he paid the ultimate price for that. And it's not unreasonable in a civilised society for the public to expect, and the police officers themselves to expect, that the government will have their back. And what would be really easy for the government to do in this case, to craft that change in the law to take this case into account. I'm confident it can be done, because I'm working with colleagues on an amendment that can make that happen. So it's absolutely possible, but the government have chosen not to do it, and I hope they change their mind.
Matthew, good to have you with us. Appreciate your insight. Thank you.